Hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar with Quuppa alongside NESA Solutions, where we'll be discussing innovation, new partnerships and opportunities in healthcare. My name is Jesse Parnanen, or Jesse. I'm the marketing designer here at Quuppa. I'll be facilitating this discussion. Thank you for everyone who is online at the moment. Obviously, it's very exceptional times with coronavirus and the COVID-19. I hope everyone is well and safe. While we're just waiting for the other few people to come in on this webinar, I would just like to say that if you have any questions, there is a small questions tab in the GoToWebinar link, and if you feel free to at any point ask questions during the webinar, and we will have a short Q&A session at the end. I do expect quite a few questions, so we may not be able to get through everything, but if you do have any questions at all, then feel free to put them in there and we will try and cover as many as possible at the end. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Tom, who can give us a brief overview of what will be happening during this webinar. Tom, over to you.
Thank you, Jesse, and welcome everyone. And we will probably take about 30 minutes. Hopefully, we'll remain on the path here. So a little review of the agenda and an introduction of today's participants. I am Tom Ruth. I'm responsible for Quuppa's business in the Americas. Following me will be Neil Salem, who is the CEO and founder of NESA Solutions. NESA is one of Quuppa's perhaps oldest and most seasoned partners with exceptional understanding of both our technology and its application in the healthcare space. Following Neil will be Ed Martinez. Ed is a progressive and well-seasoned CIO and executive in the healthcare space. Ed has led transformations with using technology to improve healthcare operations. So he's going to talk to us a little bit about his experience in doing that. And also following Ed will be Dr. Susan Fernarez, who is responsible for operations at NESA. Susan has led operational change at the functional level inside healthcare environments. And we're going to talk about the application of technology inside of a healthcare operation. And then following that, we're going to discuss how we can all work together in this unprecedented time. And next slide, Jesse. So, as I mentioned, in this unprecedented time, in the wake of COVID-19, suddenly location tracking is a very popular topic. As we, both at the macro as well as micro level, are looking to understand who has been close to other people, tracking proximity as well as relative distance between people in both the hospital or healthcare workspace, as well as in other workspaces, and being able to provide corrective actions before it's too late. This seems to be a topic that fills my inbox every day from a variety of different partners, as well as new interest from enterprises who are looking to adopt technology to keep people on the workforce, to keep people employed, and to provide comfort and documentation so that we can track what has happened in the event that someone has contracted an illness. So as we see, a lot of businesses are trying to adapt this type of principle, which has been used inside of healthcare for a variety of years, and yet the technology that they're using is still somewhat not providing the level of accuracy that is needed here. And so that's one of the main things that Quuppa endeavors to do, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how our technology does that. Next slide, please. So a couple of bullets on Quuppa. Quuppa was founded in 2012 as a spinoff from Nokia Research, a group of PhDs working on directional antenna design and harnessing Bluetooth as the main method to provide location and indoor location. We have operations around the world, 500 plus customers and almost 200 different business partners who are a variety of different system integrators who either are using our technology as a point solution or are using us as a major component of their offer. We also have a large retinue grouping of different tag vendors, and I'll talk about that in a little bit later. There are over 2,000 systems delivered globally, and I'll highlight a couple of key achievements of 2019 that are sort of the wind behind our sails as we are pushing forward into this next decade. Gartner has recently recognized us as a visionary in indoor positioning based on their last study here, and that is a function of some of these other announcements that I'm going to touch on. We have released our second generation of products, which is our Q series, which provides a higher level of capacity as well as more finite resolution. And one of the main pieces that we like to beat our chests about is that we're used in 2 different hockey leagues. Now, you may be asking, what's hockey have to do with healthcare? But if you can track a puck in real time that is flying at lightning speeds, as well as the players who are skating very quickly, being able to do that in a very complex RF environment where you have 15,000 fans all with their phones turned on is a very complicated thing for those of you who appreciate indoor positioning using radio frequency. The method of how that gets done in using angle of arrival has gotten us a fair amount of press and attention, and again is also garnered the interests of a variety of different silicon chip manufacturers. Both Nordic and Silicon Labs are now Quuppa partners and are now designing chips that can be used to be fully Quuppa compatible, such that we can track these objects in real time. The Bluetooth Special Interest Group has recognized us as a function of the 5.1 standard, being able to deliver angle of arrival and angle of departure capabilities to enable to provide high resolution location. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that works. So in this particular environment, you'll see a graphical representation of our technology. We define them as the locators, which get mounted above the tracking area. Those locators receive, or in listening mode, and they receive the signal from a tag. That tag can be on a person, or it could be on an asset, a patient, what have you. And we are going to provide, using angle of arrival, a deterministic position in the area. And the concept is designed to provide this location in a very difficult, challenging way. So places where you have a lot of people, which may provide obstruction, which is very common in the healthcare environment, as well as where you have a lot of metal, which may be a challenge with other radio frequency based technologies. So the solution is designed to be able to provide a high degree of resolution, tracking a variety of different tags that may be in the space, and doing it at in very large deployments. And the last piece, when we talk about it being open, we are doing this not only with our tags, but with a variety of different tag partners. Companies like Contact.io, Blueup, ALA Innovations, Confidex, and the list goes on. They are all available on our website. That's a quick, brief overview. A lot of you may already understand this about Quuppa if you're a partner. But next, I'm going to hand the mic over to Neil Neil is the CEO, as I mentioned, of NESA Solutions, one of the oldest and most esteemed Quuppa partners. Neil?
Hi, thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. And yes, since 2013, we've actually known Quuppa as a former hockey player and Canadian, now living in sunny Miami. That's actually how we found you guys. We were originally brought in to go into the healthcare space, and you guys can switch to the next slide already. So we've been in the healthcare space for around 2013. We looked at a problem that was going on is, how do we track things? Today, obviously, the world has changed, and what we really need to do is work together pretty rapidly and pretty urgently so that we could find a way to partner with our partners globally and with different industries to find a solution. One of the things that we've noticed a lot in the technology space right now is as they call contact tracing. How do we find a solution to a problem? And there's a lot of technologies right now that are available that could help. So this is really where we start, and this is really what we want to discuss today is in the healthcare space specifically, but in the overall space, how do we work together? You can go to the next slide, please. So as you all know, we live and breathe this every single day. Where's the peak? When the peak is occurring? Every day we watch the news, we listen to the news, and everything is shifting. Whereas we expected that we would be done with this in Miami, as an example, by the end of April, the peak has now extended ourselves. What we also realize is that there's going to be a lull. There's going to be an opportunity where we could start going to visit with our customers, deploying our technologies together. And the scary part is when does the next wave sort of hit and occur? So we have to look at this as a shifting economy, and we have to look at this as where technology really allows us to help. This is a problem that's unprecedented, as we know. What's interesting is, as what Tom said, is that we've been getting calls like we've never caught. How do we deploy the technology? How do we use the technology? When can we put it in? How long does it take? These are a lot of questions that we have in the healthcare space right now. You're not even able to get into a hospital and help them right this exact second. But what we can do is help them plan and strategize so that we're able to deploy as soon as the sort of the doors open up and go back to what we call a normalcy in some level. So understanding the industry, and if you could switch to the next slide. As we said, since 2013, we sort of took a gamble on Bluetooth. We believed that the technology was sort of future-proof. We knew that Bluetooth was going to allow us to build upon and use the technology for a multitude of other applications in the future. But we had to sort of look at where we start, what kind of infrastructure we need, how do we get the dot on the map or the person pretty accurate. So what we really realized over several years of developing this technology and working hand in hand to get it really robust, and then from an enterprise perspective, what you really need is a dot. You need an accurate location. You need a good XY coordinate. Once you have a good XY coordinate inside of an environment, you're able to do so many things, but an XY coordinate only gives you just that information. You also need sensors. So today we talk about the world of tracking, but in reality, a tag is a sensor, and a tag could provide us temperature, could provide us proximity, could provide us presence, could provide us IR, could provide us feedback. So you're talking about having a good location and a good sensor / tag that could provide you exactly where you are. But that's only just a piece of the overall technology. You need actions. What's the value of that information? What's the value of that dot on the map? So providing a business rules engine and providing a platform and a software that says, if I do this and I do that, how do I get that? And that's really where NESA has focused for so many years, because we can't just provide a person walking around a room. We can't provide a wheelchair where it is. That's easy. We know that. This technology has been proven. We know how good and valuable it is. But it's the value of knowing when two people are beside each other within 6 feet, then you could say, hey, they interacted with each other. or you could say, as an example, I could prove that I washed my hands. So what was really, really important is, and everybody has to know, is it takes a bunch of parts together to actually have a really solid product and platform. And we're very proud to be working with Quuppa since pretty much the beginning. And Quuppa really is one of the best dot makers out there, and a very robust and enterprise application. If you could switch to the next one, please. Thank you, Jesse. So as you all know, we've been doing this for a while, and working with the Quuppa ecosystem and partners since the first event. We got to meet a lot of you guys, and a lot of you guys that are on the call today, we know face to face. We've worked with you, and we're all in different industries. We all work in, in sports and consulting and stadiums and healthcare. You name the industry. The central point is that we all are focusing on location, because location is a key tool that allows us to do or provide the workflows for our customers that they need to have. Over the past 2 to 3 years, we've noticed that our technology, NESA, the Insight platform, could be used in other industries. And we've had the good fortune to work with Lufthansa. We've had the good fortune to work with a bunch of other companies out there that utilize it in a stadium, that utilize it in a prison, that utilize it in the hospitality industry. So we all recognize that we have the knowledge of location. We all know clearly that location works. So how do we deal with today's problem? How do we deploy technology like contact tracing, like hand hygiene, like tracking, as you would want to say, in your industry, in your space? Or how do you guys go into the healthcare space? And the good fortune that we have with NESA is that we've been able to work with hospitals directly with their leadership. And I'm going to introduce you to Ed Martinez. Ed is a mentor to NESA. He was really one of the reasons why we started the company, because he had a problem, and he says, I have a problem. I want to be able to deploy a pretty large health system technology like this, but show me which ones are the best and why. And so if I could hand over to Ed, he could sort of talk about his strategies.
Thank you, Neil. Can you, Jesse, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely fine.
Great. Good morning or good afternoon, depending where you are in the world today. My pleasure to be here with you all. I'm going to talk a little bit about, what I've experienced over the last few years in terms of not only this whole location intelligence space, but in general, some of the operational headaches that hospitals and health systems go through. Depending on where you're at, I think you may not know that in the healthcare field, for at least 30 years, we have been we've been very reactionary to problems. The existing problems around the world with COVID are indicative of the fact that healthcare is slow to move, but when it does move, it invests a lot of money and a lot of resources to be able to proceed. In the case of, for example, prior to having strategic perspective on things, what winds up happening in organizations such as healthcare is that we routinely look at things on a tactical nature. We look at things like, somebody comes up with the idea of we need to track a patient, or somebody says, hey, we're putting up a nursery and we need to track babies, make sure there's no baby abduction. Or we want to perhaps look at some security rounding, or we have some time tracking applications, or some lab tracking, or some temperature tracking. And what you wind up getting is a very functional space or products, but you have a whole bunch of them. It becomes a ping pong approach. You're reacting, because that's the way we've always operated in the healthcare space, to the need of the individual area, and not so much to the strategy of the organization. And when we look at strategy, we always look at a different perspective on how we would accomplish the same thing, but have a much more robust perspective of the whole thing. Next slide. So, in a healthcare environment, we are forced to look at many, many different things with many different people operating under the same roof. We, as I mentioned before, we could be looking at baby abduction, staff location, infection prevention, asset management, temperature monitoring. And one of the key things that happens throughout this whole process is that there are so many within the same organization, so many folks that are involved in the process, that you wind up having perhaps different perspective on each of the areas that you're working with. And this is easy to understand. If you're working with surgeons, if you're working with operational folks, if you're working with the folks in the cafeteria, if you're working with the folks in the parking lot, if you're working with the folks in the security department, their perspective while working under one roof is totally different from one another. They all form the basis of the organization, but the way they look and rationalize their tactical approach creates a difficult task for us in the space, especially in the IT space. These use cases, by the way, are critical across the world. Whether you're doing patient tracking, or I haven't talked about hand hygiene, which is such a critical component. For years, we've been talking about the need to be able to wash our hands. It is the #1, at least in the United States, reason for a higher cost in infectious situations in terms of hospitals stays. Why? Because people routinely forget to wash their hands. This latest cases that's happening with COVID may change a lot of that, but at the same time, we have to be able to manage that process. We have to be able to manage who does wash their hands. We have to manage where you come in contact with. Next slide. So, from my perspective as a CIO for many years, I look at things not from a tactical approach. There are always opportunities for that, and obviously we still will always do that. It's just something we do as individuals. We do that in our homes. We do that, of course, in our companies, and we definitely will continue to do that in healthcare. But when we're doing this for location intelligence, when we're looking at fixing broken processes that have the opportunity to really excel, we got to think about this a little bit more strategic. When you think about a core component that can be tied into an organization that would allow me to not have a ping pong effect, but rather a very strategic perspective, and you are able to look at this from the top level down, and being able to not only diagnose the situation, but explain to the organization that rather than buying 12 or 20 different systems that you will then have to integrate, you're able to create 12, 20, or an endless amount of workflows with one common system and one common infrastructure. You can think of the value that would bring to somebody in my position, where as a CIO, I'm looking to reduce costs, improve enterprise functionality, look at integration across the board, and really try to leverage things so that I don't have to do things twice. So, for example, if I install an infrastructure that is strategically operationalized for baby abduction, why wouldn't I be able to leverage that for staff tracking, or for perhaps infection prevention, or perhaps for checking in on a daily basis, or perhaps for contact tracing? It is the same technology used across different areas of the organization, but with a perspective that you're focused on the workflow, the rules, the tracking, not so much the tactical approach, but the strategic approach of the application. Next slide. So from that said, we have had many operations, or many discussions with our nursing colleagues. I want to hand this over now to Dr. Susan Fornaris, who has worked with me for many years, as well as worked at trying to integrate this in the clinical space. Susan is an expert in the space, and very fortunate to have her on our call. Susan?
Thank you, Ed. And it's been a pleasure working with you and your team. So yes, as clinicians, we do recognize the value of the location and the one unified platform that's enabled us to really create a true hand hygiene solution. So as Ed mentioned, when you combine this type of technology with the business needs of the end users, again, the clinicians, we're able to develop over a dozen use cases that we aligned with the World Health Organization 5 Moments of Hand Hygiene framework, and that was quite the task. As we all know, in today's day and age, hand hygiene can save lives, and it does. And it has now become a primary focus in the healthcare space. With our hand hygiene module that we developed, the tags provide real-time interaction and feedback. This allows the data to show us as healthcare leaders any trends in human behavior or additional processes that we may want to optimize or streamline. So as an example, as we all know, hospitals are filled with dozens of infections beyond just COVID-19. It's natural for C. diff and MRSA to live within this environment. And it's because our patients come to the hospital either with patients or they may with infections, or they may obtain such infections during their stay, especially if the proper hand hygiene is not followed or proper protocols aren't followed. So as a leader, to me, it's critical to trace that infection across all the patients that may have come into contact with that infection, as well as then go back to the data and show the hand hygiene compliance rate of such staff members, clinicians, physicians that may have come in contact with those patients. That's how you would identify and trend who are the ones that truly are complying with proper hand hygiene or not. That really brings a lot of powerful information to healthcare leaders in order to continue to make decisions based on any quality outcomes that they need to obtain. Moving on. This brings us to the halo contact tracing, such a hot topic now. And naturally, as a nurse, the first thing that pops into my head is providing the safest environment to not just our patients, but staff. So after the development of our hand hygiene modules and other modules such as baby abduction and tracking workflows, we were very quick to develop this type of contact tracing workflow. And the video that's playing now, we actually did live just a few days ago in the office for your enjoyment. This places, basically, as you can see, a halo around a person or an object and logs every interaction of every halo that comes into contact with any configurable distance. So if you want to say 6 feet, 2 meters, it's all customizable. And it sends notifications when they converge as needed. So again, as a healthcare leader, to have this full traceability available, not only identifies who came into contact with the infection, but it also traces it back to the source. And this, to me as a leader, it identifies every person and location that came into contact with this infection along the way, which is very valuable information for the safety of the patients and the staff. As an example, I would want to know, and my staff would want to know, if there is a threat to their safety given such an infection. This is how they're able to identify the exact type of PPE that they may need before they enter this space. It also identifies the actual space that may be contaminated, and it will alert the staff not to enter the space because it hasn't been terminally cleaned yet. And honestly, I would also want to use this type of contact tracing for my staff as an example to know if my staff is taking a contaminated IV pump from one patient room to another, or are they following the right protocol and obtaining a clean IV pump from Biomed. In essence, there are many use cases which this Halo contact tracing module can be applicable to, and it can identify a multitude of safety risks across multiple industries. Moving on. So some of you may already be within the healthcare space, perhaps in asset tracking, and others not at all. Well, healthcare is our niche. Our success within healthcare has basically been the involvement of the clinical staff from start to finish, from the bedside to the C-suite. So NESA is not a top-down company. They really listen to the end user. They listen to the clinical experts, the boots on the ground. They are the ones that perform the day-to-day tasks. They are the ones that know how to best resolve the issues. So together with these experts, we have created a playbook, and it's filled with multiple processes, workflows, and best practices within a hospital setting. We know how to establish this cultural buy-in, and we would love to help you. Neil?
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. And just to add to that, obviously, I like to always add to a few things. You know, understanding every part of deploying technology, from just setting it up, planning, infrastructure, deployment, developing tags, developing the software. The key part of all this conversation is the value of the accuracy. Once you have the accuracy and you build a workflow engine, you're able to basically build anything you want. So, you know, building the contact tracing Halo was actually very simple for us to do. It allows us to do a lot of different things. So by taking the parts of a few things and building it as a total sum, you know, that's really where we sort of stand as a whole. So we're here to help. We understand the industry, healthcare. We understand a lot of other industries, but our healthcare is our niche, is our focus from the beginning. And as Quuppa partners, you know, what we really want to provide is knowledge and guidance. If you guys already have deployments in other industries that you want to apply this to your clients, we could apply the technology pretty easily and rapidly. So, you know, our application is a very large platform, sits in the cloud. It's scalable and then some. But again, it's not only about the technology, it's about understanding the business problem. So we always try to say, what's your business problem? And then from that, we define the technology that's needed. So hopefully, you know, between myself, Ed, and Susan speaking, it gives you an understanding of not only the technology side, but really how to go about, you know, thinking about offering it to your partners or your customers, or going to hospitals right now. And then the second thing is understanding from a clinical perspective, really how it works, because operationalizing technology is harder than deploying technology. Anyways, that's really what we have to say. Back to you, Tom.
Yeah, so in summary, as I mentioned at the beginning, there are a lot of examples of where this halo effect is now desired in workforce safety environments in a variety of different industries. And so the rules engine that I think you were showing, you know, can be applied across a variety of different, you know, use cases, whether that be, you know, in restaurants or healthcare or what have you. Construction, manufacturing 4.0. We see a lot of examples of where, you know, there's some articles in the New York Times and in the Washington Post that will highlight, you know, how people are trying to use the phone proximity, and that's not going to render a high degree of accuracy here. So being able to use an infrastructure, and many of you already understand Quuppa, and being able to layer something like this in quickly can help solve some of these business problems for your customers. And I guess that's the other point that I wanted to drive home here for everyone. So I think that's concludes everything. You know, as you know, we're all in this together. You know, we're all here to flatten the curve, as we're all delivering this probably from the comfort of our own homes. And I wish everyone safety and good health.
Okay.
Yes, do we have any questions?
Yes, thank you very much. Obviously, thank you to everyone who's attended today. We're just going to have a quick Q&A. We've had some questions come through, but in the meanwhile, one thing I'd like to say is if you do have any questions, feel free to put the questions into the GoToWebinar platform on the left side. We've got a few here that we're going to go through at the moment. But in terms of this Q&A, if you want to reach out into the healthcare sector with Quuppa as the base technology provider, feel free to get in contact with us, or if you're already working with us and you want to get into healthcare, contact your sales representative. Alternatively, contact us at marketing@quuppa.com, or if you're just looking for some more information about our technology, visit quuppa.com. If you would like some more information about partnering with NESA Solutions, or you are an end customer with a case or hospital, then I would recommend you go straight to Neil, which is neil@nesasolutions.com. Or if you want to find any more information out about the NESA Solutions solution, then feel free to go onto the website at nesasolutions.com. All right, let's move on to the Q&A. We've had a few questions come in, so I will just go through a couple of them. There may be a few too many, that we might not be able to get through today, but I will just double check for you. The first one we've had in, I think this is probably geared a little bit more towards Neil, but it's why did you choose to use Bluetooth technology?
That's a good question. So from 2011 to 2013, or actually 14, we studied the market and looked at the available technologies. And at that time, nothing was giving us the accuracy that we wanted, and also at the cost that was important. We saw Bluetooth as a growing technology. Also, I use the word future-proof many times. Plus, it also allowed us to have its own infrastructure, as Ed said. You know, if you're putting in a strategic infrastructure that allows us to basically build upon, it allows us a level of security. So we're not sitting on the same network environment as the Wi-Fi environment or in other environments. So that was one key point. Bluetooth as a whole, we saw the growth. We saw the battery life extending substantially longer than other technologies, and we knew that it was going to only get better. And plus, to be honest with you, the angle of arrival technology allowed us to do things, you know, it comes down to this. If you have the ability to track within a few inches, you could do any workflow you want. If you only know that you're within a room, you could only know that you're within a room. So Bluetooth gave us the tools and the imagination, that we had, allowed us to sort of mesh those two things together. So Bluetooth was a very strategic and smart decision, and we're excited to be part of that, that world.
Perfect. Sounds great. I've got another one here. This is probably more along Tom's lines. It's what tag types can be used, and can any Bluetooth 5.1 tags be used with Quuppa technology? Tom, did you want to take that one?
Yes. In short, yes. Provided that these tags have the Quuppa profile on them. The Quuppa profile has been functioning since Bluetooth 4.0 and above. This is, we operate with an ecosystem of different tag partners, as I mentioned earlier. So, provided that the profile is on there to provide the angle of arrival information, and referred to as the IQ data, that's basically the fundamental underpinning.
Okay.
Can I add to that? If it's possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Knowing the Quuppa ecosystem of all the tag providers, we've had a good fortune to work with almost all of them. And the cool part about that is that everybody's building similar technologies, but has a lot of different functions. Some tags now have, IoT, the sensor data functionality. Some tags have IR functionality. And so the value of that Bluetooth ecosystem is that, you could use the proprietary channel because there's a lot of noise out there, and a lot of the Quuppa partners or tag providers have that already. And then there's also, open channel technology. You just have to look at the applications you're being put inside. So the tags are really important, because as IoT data, sensor data is coming in, and you're incorporating that IoT data into your solution data, you not only are tracking somebody walking around, you're actually knowing the temperature of the room. And then from a business rules perspective, you could really change the whole flow, because you're now assuming a lot of new data. So tag data is really important, and the Quuppa partners, the certified partners, make really solid tags, and I'm fortunate to work with a bunch of them.
Yeah, and Jesse, let me just add to that. Just like I mentioned, that's being what Neil just described as being strategic. If you're going to deploy an infrastructure, why would you want to deploy an RTLS infrastructure that's Wi-Fi based, that has a proximity of approximately 15 feet, or which doesn't really contribute to what you're trying to do? Tom had mentioned earlier that if you can track a hockey puck, you can track anything, which is very true. You can track a hockey puck to within centimeters. Why wouldn't you use that same technology to track people, process, and movement of things? So to Neil's point, if you're going to build a tag, why just use the tag for tracking a person? Why not track it? Why not use it to track temperature, to track angle of arrival, whatever else you were trying to think of? So that's a strategic view to meet an objective in the business world.
Yes, thank you, Ed. One last point. When you mentioned hockey, I don't know if I was very clear about this, but having a lot of 15,000 people all with their phones turned on is consuming a lot of 2.4 space, if you will. And in a hospital is very in healthcare environments also very similar, right? We've got a lot of different traffic going on, so being able to operate in a different channel, or what we refer to as the Quuppa proprietary channel, allows us to work in a in a high resolution environment that's otherwise fairly congested.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks for those. We are being inundated with quite a few questions. One thing I would like to just say at the moment, we do have quite a lot of technical questions on the line. This is more of a commercial webinar, so if you have some technical questions, I've seen some come through about Quuppa protocol, generating maps and geo positions, information like that. If you have a question specific to the technology or the tracking technology, I would recommend sending an email to us at Quuppa. If you have a more specific question about, a more specific technical question about the solution itself at NESA Solutions, or the halo tracing or anything like that, then I would recommend emailing Neil. But we can still get through a few more of these other ones that are a little bit more generic here. I've got one here for Neil. How does NESA offer its services, and can it provide a total solution or turnaround?
Sure. So NESA does offer a total solution. Being involved from the beginning and understanding every aspect of developing the technology and also the software. We understand from hello to it's on. Our application is a cloud application, and we provide it. We could basically deploy it. All that we really need is an infrastructure, a map, and then we could basically from anywhere put the dot there. Really what we do is provide you the tools and the platform to have a workflow engine. So it allows you to actually have that value of the dot do something. I always use the word dot. A lot of people hate that, but the reality is what we see are dots moving around on a map. So again, our application is a cloud-based application. We also have started building our application in Kubernetes, which allows us to be on-premise or be basically cloud agnostic from that perspective. And again, just to add one thing, Jesse, technically, understanding how Quuppa works is really important because you have to know your environment. And once you tune your environment the proper way, it allows you to do workflows that never existed before.
Okay, great. Got another one here. Like I said, we're going to start running out of time soon, but we have got loads of questions. I will try and get through as many as possible. But if not, then we're planning on doing a bit of a Q&A article online for a lot of the questions that are being asked during this webinar right now, so everyone can go back and have a look at them again. But moving on, I have another one here. How do we expand our healthcare offering, or if we're already in healthcare, how do we enter it?
I can speak a little to that, and maybe Ed and Susan. But from an application perspective, every healthcare environment knows what location tracking is. So everybody now needs contact tracing or some kind of technology to validate where people are. So our application is available today. It's a very robust application that could scale anywhere. It's in multiple languages. But what you really need to be able to do is go to your customer and basically ask them, how could I help? I think that a lot of people don't know where to go. Tom made a good comment. There are different solutions right now available, tag-to-tag communication, which is what we call the RSSI, the signal strength, and a few other kind of variations. People are going to be looking everywhere, but the reality is to provide the true granularity and transparency and traceability, you need a robust application. So we're there to help, and again, that's really where it comes from, the healthcare, and we understand healthcare. So if you have healthcare questions, just call us. Same thing from technical. If you have questions, ask us. Ed?
If I could add to that, so the other key component here, and in my opinion, the secret sauce, is being so engaged with the clinical staff. If you don't get buy-in from those clinicians within a hospital setting, remember, they are the healthcare heroes and they have superpowers. They will shut any technology down. You need their buy-in. You need to ask them and engage them from the start. How do you see this best working within your organization? What can we do to help you? How can we support you reaching or optimizing your time so that you can then spend your time with the patients? So if you don't engage them and ask them and get nursing and physician buy-in into the technology, it doesn't matter what you try to put in. Eventually it will fail, or it will not be as successful as it can be from the start. So that's my suggestion.
From a sales perspective, clearly not every organization is going to look at this from a strategic enterprise across the board investment, at least not initially. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But what you can do is approach, like Susan's saying, those areas that have the pain, that are feeling the need, tactically with a strategic vision. And so that means that you're able to meet an objective today that has a longer play in the future, being able to tie in much more of the infrastructure for an enterprise perspective. This is very important, because if I invest in something, I don't want to have invested and have to throw it away in 6 months. So this is an investment for the future, and I think that's very important to recognize, that healthcare organizations do not like to invest unwisely, and when they do invest, they invest very wisely.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you everybody for their input on that one. Well, I think we've got about 3 minutes left, but I'll just go through one more question here. Maybe this is probably a little bit more towards Tom, but it says, can your solution mainly regarding the infrastructure, can we use an existing infrastructure like mobile in a building solution, or embed your signal and get a Bluetooth connection from that?
The Quuppa solution requires that our locators be deployed, as well as, because that's part and parcel to calculating the position. So no, at this point not. But again, the part that is open is the tag infrastructure, and so provided that they are using Bluetooth 5.1 or and using the Quuppa profile, would be 2 key elements that we would steer everybody toward.
However, Tom, just to add to that, the NESA solution, however, the middle layer could be used in different technologies and infrastructure. However, to your point, the accuracy is not going to be there. So even though you'll provide relevant data, the data will not provide the level of accuracy that we're talking about here to meet the objective of the Halo or patient tracking without the Quuppa technology.
Okay, great. Well, we've got just 1 more minute left. I've got one for Neil here. How do we get a copy of the NESA Healthcare Playbook?
$1 million. No. I usually say $1 billion, but you know what it is, what it is. No, please reach out to us, contact us, send us an email. Let's talk about what your problem is. We have all of our documentation on our website. You could visit it and see all the different applications that we have, and modules, specific modules, custom modules. But my suggestion is call us and ask us what the problem is, where you're located, and what you want to achieve. It really goes down to this. Understanding the business problem is how you provide the solution. Our failure in the beginning was always trying to be technology, and the reality is, until you understand the business problem and work with the business user, then you could define how the technology works, and they will see instantaneously that the technologies that are being provided could do so many things in so many different departments. It becomes that strategic view that they didn't even realize that they started that conversation. And a lot of the people that are on the call today is how we started our conversation, had a core problem in healthcare, and they realized they could use it across the board. So communicate with your customer, communicate with us. I'm around. Again, visit our website at nesasolutions.com. And that's it. And I really appreciate everybody taking your time during the day. You know, we're all working our derrieres off to be in the location space, understand the space. It's been a long journey for a lot of us. But you know, unfortunately, COVID, the positive is that it put a very big spotlight, or as Fabio would say, a flashlight on our industry. And location is here. We're going nowhere, and it's a real solution to a problem that exists today.
Okay, that's great. I think we've got about 1 minute over, but one thing I would just like to say is that we've had a lot of interest in this webinar, and if we continue to get a lot of interest within this healthcare sector using Quuppa technology, we will host another webinar. And like I said, there's way too many questions for us to get through at the moment. There's stuff coming up in terms of privacy and legal grounds, and variety of application designs for nursing home and elderly homes, and we've had a variety of questions, but unfortunately we're running out of time now. What we'll do is we're going to send out everyone who attended, we'll send out a post-care email with some information, and we're planning, we'll provide the recording for the webinar as well as the slides, some marketing collateral from NESA Solutions, from Quuppa. It will all be available for download, and we'll have a look at doing a separate written Q&A session with a lot more of these questions and answers to those questions coming up soon. So keep an eye on your inboxes. But I think that's about it. I would like to really thank everyone that's attended online. It means a lot that we've got such a great attendance rate, and obviously, like we said and mentioned so many times, it's such an exceptional time at the moment. So yeah, thank you for your time, and I look forward to speaking with everybody else soon.